Hello, and we are live. Hello, MedTech Insights followers. This is Dr. Jennifer Joe with my co-host, Dr. Bhatt. We are now live at the Convergence Forum on with the beautiful ocean behind me, and wonderful to be here. Positive around me.
Absolutely. So welcome to day 2 of MedTech Insights at the Convergence Forum. Incredibly exciting day yesterday. We went all the way from talking about proteomics to talking about what's new in venture, thinking a lot about AI and data and how we were going to do clinical trials better. And then spent half the day talking about diversity and equity and what we need to do as business people, as clinicians, as scientists to make sure that not only we have diversity in our patient population, but also in the population of people who are working in this field. So it's a really great day. Very excited to have a couple guests with us this morning. And we're going to start with Art Tinklenberg, who is sitting right here next to me. Art is a biotech entrepreneur. She did MedTech Ventures before, biotech entrepreneur now, and has been in Ceramedics. So really excited to introduce him to all of you and our audience. And Art, I will let you take it over and maybe tell them a little bit about what we learned about you in terms of how you ended up being in this position as president, and then a little bit about what Ceramedics does.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Jennifer, for having me here. Unfortunately, it's not sunny here in Kivel, but it's still an amazing place. So I started my professional life as a plant evolutionary biologist, and so studied living systems. From there, moved into molecular biology, molecular genetics, studying the cell cycle, with the hope, and this was quite a while ago, that you could cure cancer if it was just cell growth. Turns out that wasn't quite as simple as we all hoped. But fast forward, jumped out of academia, went into investment banking. Academia wasn't helping me solve the problem that I was trying to solve personally, which was how do we get cures, how do we get new techniques to patients, how do we change care delivery, how do we change the patient experience. And so from there, learned a bit of business finance, got involved in the early stage capital business that I helped build. We did early stage MedTech investing and biotech investing. And we actually spent quite a bit of time working with physicians. I've been in the OR, which, everyone probably listens to this knows more about that than I do. It's frankly a little terrifying, but learned a lot and really got a better sense of what the physicians do every single day, what they deal with, and how they try and get patients to be better off. So from there, kept getting more and more interested in what the physicians and scientists were actually thinking about doing. They had science, they had ideas. How do you get that stuff to the patient? What's the ecosystem you need? And I think Convergence is a great word for that, because as time has gone by, as Moore's law is increasingly applied to everything in medicine and life science, we just have more and more data to apply to both engineering, to drug discovery and development, to MedTech innovation. There are new companies now, as everybody on this feed probably knows, creating all kinds of wearables, and there's an initial commercial concept of some of those things is actually quite limited, but those wearables are gathering multimodal data all day long. So we're going to end up with amazing longitudinal data sets that we can tie back to something as basic, let's say, as molecular proteomics. And that will change the probability of success, product development, and will change the patient experience. So what I've been doing there is kind of moving backwards, back to the lab, working with innovators and early stage folks. And right now I'm working on a project that's a new company being spun out of Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York. And as everyone probably knows, MSK is most widely known for its cancer research and cancer treatment. The physician scientists I'm working with study radiation for 40 years. They know a lot about biology. They accidentally uncovered a fundamental regulator of damage. And now we have the ability to reverse that. What that means is you give a patient a drug, in this case an antibody, and it will maintain and restore and feel health in the face of many different kinds of diseases. Also, it's basically allowing the adult organ to regrow its stem cell population. So very excited about that.
Fantastic. So for the people in the audience who may not be the clinicians or the biology guys out there, Endothelium is in everywhere in our body, so it's in your muscle lining. That we see it from cardiology standpoint, endothelial dysfunction. We think it's actually underlying a whole host of issues that we deal with. So my eyes lit up when I started talking about what we did yesterday. So when you say you're working with smaller companies, and you mentioned academia, but you mentioned leaving academia. And this is a conversation that's come up a lot here at Convergence Forum, and it comes up, on social streams. So I figured let's head on. Do you find that it's easier now to work with academia from the outside and the knowledge that you have rather than looking from the inside? And what advice do you have for people who are thinking about that? And then we'll go back to
Yes, absolutely. So I'm not as young as many people listening probably. So when I started my professional training career, academia very often had a very isolated mindset. Basic science, for the sake of basic science, and that's not a bad thing. That's connected to the original mandates around validation and those programs. But learning over time that there were also institutions that were much more proactive about engaging the outside world. We do this research. What's it for? Well, if it doesn't apply to something, if you can't show it has a meaningful impact beyond publishing papers and security more ground. So the experiences I've had give me a much better, I think, view of how to engage with academic institutions. But I would say that on the other hand, the entire ecosystem has all changed. So academic institutions now recognize that they have a duty, a fiduciary duty actually, to invest in and maintain intellectual property portfolios and to try and find a way to create value from those. And the same token, as an element of recruiting and maintaining an environment that's sustainable and supports young investigators, they make these resources available to young investigators. So there's a lot less closed off behavior now. So if you're a younger professor or a younger physician, you're probably going to get encounter folks from industry or from business offices much more readily. And so I think that's an amazing change, because it's going to support getting these ideas out of the brains of the physicians and scientists faster and get them out into the world.
It's great to hear you say that, because I think, we're at the Convergence Forum, right, about how converge, and I think in the academic industry, even in just large hospitals or community practices, what we're seeing is people are much more willing to collaborate and understand the role of collaborative work. And I think that's made an incredible difference. And so, 10, 15 years ago, we didn't often say something spun out of, and then a large academic medical center. Like that wasn't a phrase. And now you hear, this is spun out of MIT, this is spun out of Harvard, that came out of Stanford, this is from MSK. And so it's really great to hear and see those things. So tell us a little bit about Cerametics itself.
Sure.
How big you guys are, when you started, and I think we've gotten a sense of your mission, but
So the company was founded in 2015, actually, as a holding company, and it comprises really three distinct sets of intellectual property. And so I won't drag us all down into that, because it's the founders are physician scientists, so they don't really think about a product modality. They think about how can what we've learned benefit patients. So one of the founders is the National Academy. He invented essentially radiotherapy. So he's still doing radiotherapy and this whole set of products and ideas. What I'm directly involved in is basically, for lack of a term, vanilla biotech of antibodies to target, and to feel gets restored, and then all the bad stuff stops. So we've been working on that for a few years. We've got seed capital, we've got quite a bit of federal government funding, because one of the applications is for treating lethal radiation. So the federal government is still quite concerned about nuclear terrorism. We're tracking to our Department of Defense and so on. So the team is roughly about 10 people today, including consultants. And so we're in the process of moving next year today.
Fantastic. We had some great sessions yesterday morning. We had Laurie who joined us from Halloran Consulting Group. And we later in the day kind of enjoyed the session thinking about there are people like Art who have been through this, right? Who have done it, but there are those of you out there who haven't. And so they're trying to kind of having a really good idea, very clear, understand how you're going to deliver, and then get that funded and show that you can do it. So that's kind of step one. But then as you move further along, there are steps in terms of regulatory, how to put things together, getting to the FDA. That as we discussed, we're just not taught at all. I said maybe talk about it, not taught at all in medical school and residency. And I think this is where sometimes it's great to look at colleagues. And so I would encourage you to reach out to Art if we're going to people out there, just about how to even think about this from the beginning. Because as I suspect, Art, you have a concept in mind for how you think this should go, where the life has all sorts of turns, but always ready for it. But you probably have the concept for what the lifespan of ceramics for you is, right? And you walk into that. It's not let's see how this goes.
Yes. That's a great, you said a lot of things that have a huge significance. So biotech, life science, tech, these are areas of business that are unlike any other category of business. And I'll illustrate extreme examples to my point, but in biotech, the historic numbers say that it costs $4 million fully capitalized to launch a new biotech product. It takes 10 years. There's no other industry on the earth that requires that level of R&D and risk-taking and belief to sustain that kind of capital formation. The only exception might be filmmaking, where you have to raise all the money first and spend it, and then hope you get the box office downstream. So that requires multiple different types of stakeholders with very different sets of expertise, and no one person's going to have all of them. You're not going to call me to get your property law, and you're not going to call me to get advice about what the patients look like. Right? You're talking to doctors about it. So there's most important thing if you want to have an idea. The rest of this ecosystem basically is there to support folks that have ideas. They don't really have their own ideas, right? So the missing currency that comes from the people on the front line is the idea. Is this a good idea? Does it make a difference? We, in the downstream ecosystem, can evaluate it, but we generally don't. We're not at the front line about doing research. So we don't have the ideas.
No, so it's interesting when you say idea too. Back on the clinicians out there. There's idea. You have an idea, or a company can come in and say, this is what I can do, does it mean useful? And I would say, does it solve a problem? Rather than is it a good idea? Because I think it's hard to know that I have, but if you say, no, I have a problem where I can see this being a potential solution, that's what they mean by is a good idea. And I think we oftentimes, we do a lot of problem reporting without problem solving it also, right? And that's been kind of what we're trying to change about the delivery of medicine. And it's been used too. But I think in interacting with biotech, working with the clinicians out there, think about it as like, yes, you have to say, here's your problem I have. Do you think that you can solve this for me? And then have that conversation and be very honest. I think one thing that we do a lot is it's very sensitive to clinicians to talk with biotech. It feels like something new and different. And so very nice, like, smile a lot about it. And sometimes it's better to say, no, here's how can you really like, how does your thing solve things for me? And they appreciate that conversation too, rather than smile and loud, like, good idea, I love Philly, and that doesn't necessarily help with your usefulness. Maybe it's helpful. Excellent. Jen, and maybe in the audience, questions coming in.
So lots of people are really interested in what's going on. We have Jim Howard from St. Louis, CEO of Readout, who is watching. Good to see you, Jim. Always delighted to have you watch the show. So the one question that we're getting from the audience is, what you're working on right now, what's changing in the what are the two or three most profound pieces about the endothelium, how much you currently think about the endothelium, how it's different now, and how this is revolutionary?
Great question. So 20 some odd years ago, the vascular system, vessels were sort of considered plumbing. So it's broken, call a plumber, right? Get in there with a wrench, with a stent, whatever. It's broken, that's how you fix it. Then something profound people developed stents. And that was to me the first true convergence of biotech and MedTech. And that was a sea change for treating patients. I have a friend who's a physician, heart attack, got two stents, and a lot of people doing stents. So I think beginning to understand that biology is not just the static plumbing, but it's extremely sensitive to turbulent flow, and that starts in the work of Rodrigo back in the day. I'm still fascinated by what he discovered. So now today what we know is endothelium and vascular system is very active in dynamic structure. Every organ has it, and it connects to the bone marrow. So the bone marrow sends out endothelial reparative cells to distal sites. Endothelium itself maintains the bioparenchymal function. So it's got a master role, if you like, coordinating what the organs are doing and making sure the organ is doing the right thing at the right time. It's also an antigen presenting structure, which means it's actually part of the immune system. So all this has been converging different fields in the last, I'd say, 5 years. And people really began to understand this, so that if the endothelium is injured and cannot repair itself, which is what our target is all about, then you end up with a progressive process where stem cell niches stop functioning the way they should. Endothelial reparative cells from the bone marrow trafficking into endothelium fail to incorporate. And then the response of the tissue is, well, we better do something. So a protein called VEGF is produced, which drives neoangiogenesis. And those neoangiogenic vessels are actually not the same thing as normal vessels. They're not very good. And in addition, the tissues start to secrete extracellular proteins, fibrinogen, collagen, et cetera, as a way of sort of shoring things up. And really what that is fibrosis. And you can get kidney failure, liver failure, you get pulmonary failure, you can get strokes in the brain, you can get retinal failure, just a bunch of bad stuff. And the more we look at this, the more we realize this fundamental mechanism of sensing damage and repairing damage is actually pretty universal throughout the body. So that's why we think it's profound. We think this is going to change many fields of medicine.
Yeah, so here's a question for you, because now I'm starting to think about VEGF, and I'm starting to think about, as you mentioned, maybe not the ideal solution to the body does, but the way the body sometimes tries to heal, repair, make new roads, if you will, for itself. Is there a level of specificity that you're going to have to work on next, so that you're getting to the endothelium in the organ and in the area you want to get?
Great question. So our target is endothelium specific. One of the great things about how the field of biology have allowed us to discover such things, techniques, genomics, et cetera. And so our target is really present on the surface of endothelial cells when those are going active disease, which means you don't really care what the drug is doing, because it's not going to do anything. It's not going to do anything. It's an antibody that is very safe, with a very good safety profile. So the antibody is only going to do something when the target's expressed. And when the target's expressed, you don't want it expressed. It gives us a really nice, what we call therapeutic dose the drug, and it's really no side effects.
You know, it's so interesting, because we were talking about this in a very different concept. It comes back to convergence again. We had CIC-Health with us a few weeks ago, and we spent a lot of time talking about polychronic disease and patients monitoring their own multiple diseases. And now what I'm seeing is, you're telling me somebody with some polychronic disease, and now what I'm seeing is you're telling me they'll polychronic disease, it may actually be related, and they'll feel dysfunction. We may actually get this also instead of one.
Correct. We think about trying to put ourselves in the shoes of patients that live with chronic disease, particularly diabetes. So that's our first clinical target. Because clinical data there, biology, many other labs published on this target related biology. So we have a very strong rationale for going into diabetic patient. And the idea would be, even with improvements in glucose control, diabetic patients are still getting complications. They're still getting microvascular in the kidney, and liver, and the eye, and so on. And in fact, diabetes has blindness. Right? So the idea here is we can create a self-administered subcutaneous antibody product for patients that they maybe take once a month, once every 6 months. And it prevents all these downstream complications.
All right, this is so exciting. We are excited to see how you guys do, how Ceramedics does, and to hear more about this as you guys progress. This is fantastic. Thank you so much. Now, just to our audience, we haven't rehearsed what it looks like when we get up and have somebody move and come back. So I'm sorry if it looks totally awkward.
This is live.
But this is what we're going to do now. So we're going to try and and switch up a little bit. Did we just lose him?
We just lost the next guest.
Oh.
Is our microphone still on?
Yes, yes.
It is.
We're going to be live through the
Just say hi to Jim Howard in St. Louis. That's where I did my first research. So at WashU in the Monsanto Research Building years ago.
St. Louis makes good people. That's right.
I love St. Louis.
That's exactly
Great place.
right. All right. Well, let's we'll let you kind of come up and out of here, and
I think we have Scott.
we'll have Scott come.
join us.
Yeah, Scott, come chat with us
I'm
first.
totally not prepared, but your next guest is getting a cup of coffee.
Wanda, why don't you come and sit, Scott, and we
You're
can
like,
talk about your thoughts about highlights from yesterday. So Scott Kirschner, we had him yesterday. We are happy to have him back today running the Convergence Forum.
yeah, I'm just keeping the chair warm, actually.
That's excellent. But we'd love to hear. So yesterday, we started the show by telling the audience, we went all the way from, AI and data to proteomics to new things in venture to diversity and equity in clinical trials. I mean, we were everywhere.
Yeah, and diversity and equity and hiring and remote culture versus in person. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, there's a ton to discuss.
Yeah. Can I interview you for a second?
Sure.
So I'm just curious about your life in terms of like, what is the mix of like your typical week in being places in person and versus sitting in front of a screen?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm a little bit of an odd bird in that I did telemedicine starting in 2013, and maybe about 7 people joined me in doing that during snowstorms in Boston, but not a lot. And then COVID happened, and that was I was telling Jen the other day. That was my nobody puts baby in the corner moment, right? Like it was,
you're ready.
And we turned to 100% virtual at a lot of places like Mass General that were able to do that, that had an infrastructure, and we improved our infrastructure by doing it. But we've settled back down now, and the Northeastern United States probably has the highest proportion of still doing video visits compared to the rest of the country.
Yeah, but I was just curious for you individually, your typical week, like, how much are you doing, either telemedicine or homework or like being at the hospital?
Individually,
your typical week,
like I have 2 children and a dog. So there are other reasons that I go to the office for quiet and other things. But there's 2 days a week where I will see my patients virtually.
Yeah.
And then the other 2 days I will see them in person in the office. And then we're still rounding in the hospital. The virtual rounding has stopped a little bit. We used to do a lot of virtual rounding during COVID just to lessen exposure and people crossing each other. Yeah. So we could kind of iPad into a room. But we do a little less of that. So we definitely see patients in the office. And then one of the things we were discussing was procedures. And when will they come back? So, I do 2 days a week virtual, 2 days a week in person. It's about 50-50 split for me. Different people are different. The in-person caring for patients, though, has resumed normally. But procedures are coming back too. And there's 2 reasons. So the first reason is when we see patients in the office now, the number and the percentage of those patients who need something done is much higher. Because those but also even in the regular patients, those who just need a blood pressure check are getting that at home. Those who just need a conversation are getting that done at home. So the ones coming in are the ones who are really closer to needing something done. And luckily out of that in extremis I held on for a year. And now we just have clinical valve procedures. Waiting in line, because a lot of the people who didn't need a clinic visit weren't there, and because a lot are open. I mean, the one commodity we have, who didn't need it weren't there, and many of are open. And now, I mean, the one who can come in and get their procedures sooner, so we're starting to see an uptick, really, in the number of procedures. So I think that's going to change how much in-person culture we have. Yeah. And I think the second thing is there are people who are burned out, and we've lost some people across the globe in medicine. But those who are there are ones who really do want to do more. Yeah. And it's a bent towards that culture of wanting to do more for the patients, wanting to get more done for them. Yeah, I do feel like there's an interesting, you're seeing a little more of the practitioner side of medicine, right? And in Boston, we do have that, the healthcare delivery side. This event brings together a lot of people, right? Developing, new therapeutics and new software and things like that. And there's so much money sloshing around in that universe right now, right? That it has a very different vibe. It's a little bit, I think it's a little bit, more sort of gassed up right now, whereas the healthcare delivery world is probably
out of gas.
We are out of gas and trying to turn things around. But so here, let me turn it back to you then and ask you one question.
Okay, good try. Yeah.
Which is, do you think that the people in this industry feel like they can get in better now to the large healthcare delivery systems than before COVID, or do you think that happened and we're waiting a little?
I don't know. I don't have a super informed opinion on that. Like, is the healthcare system getting more porous? I still feel like it's a pretty inefficient, sales process, right?
Yeah.
For every startup is building up their own sales force that's going and sending emails or holding virtual webcasts or, knocking on doors. And so I'm not sure that the porosity has probably increased a little bit in the pandemic, but I think the countervailing factor is just everybody is so busy and just attention is so scarce right now that like definitely see it in the media world, and I think you see it in the sales and marketing world too.
Yeah.
No,
it's true.
Yeah,
it's
where
true.
To some extent I do think, events like this or events like health or events like South by Southwest and the Consumer Electronics Show, like people are looking forward to those in-person events returning a little bit. Absolutely. Because you can grab someone in the hallway and tell them about your great
and have a real conversation, which is important. I'm going to give a quick shout out to Matt Butler and who works with Adam Landman. They're working in innovation at Mass General Brigham, and one of the things they're thinking about is how do we as an institution start to reach out and bring specific groups in such that there is a platform and such that there is a workflow and making it easier for companies to have one entryway, even though, we love for people to enter wherever they find natural ways, and then make it easier for clinicians to have a choice of what they want to use.
Yeah, and the one thing I would say about that, and then we'll move on to more caffeinated guests who are waiting off screen there, is like, I do think that there's a practice like in large organizations like Mass General, or I was talking to somebody from MetLife, the insurance company, where they're getting more open about, these are the problems and pain points that we're trying to work on, or these are some opportunity spaces we see. And if you're really clear about that to the startup world and the venture world, like they are happy to serve you up specific companies, as opposed to just having it be a mess where it's like everyone remotely related to telemedicine is knocking on the CIO's door. And so I think that like putting that signal out into the world can kind of help focus that.
Everybody remember that. Everybody remember that out there, the clinicians who are listening, especially, put your problems out there, tell them what you need solved.
So all right, I've been warming up the chair. I think you want Peter next.
Before, as you warm up the chair, I know I've turned into a voice from the side. Sorry for everyone watching. We're having a little bit of choppy Wi-Fi today, so I took myself out of the feed. We have Dr. Dagmir Rivera, who is watching from Puerto Rico, and she's just, I'm going to put her on the screen in just a minute, and she's just asking, what is the Convergence Forum? What is the purpose? Could you speak a little bit to that?
It's a good question. And we started it more than 10 years ago, 15 years ago or so. And just to give people an opportunity to come together who were interested in the intersections between, big pharma, biotech, which were still very separate worlds, and medical devices and healthcare IT and bioinformatics. And, now it's become like therapeutic apps. So just a way for people in all those different fields to get together and talk about, well, how were they going to work together, and where they're kind of those opportunities at the intersection.
That's great. And you started this in 2003?
I should remember the year, but I think it was 2004. Okay. But we'll fact check that.
It's long before everybody else realized that these fields were going to merge so beautifully, though. So it's foresight.
Yeah, and I do, I think we're grateful to a lot of the like early advisors to the conference, people like John Abley, who's the co-founder of Boston Scientific, who were like very interested in that topic of convergence. And so we kind of just borrowed the word from some of those early meetings.
All right, we're going to do an awkward switch again, and we'll bring Peter Benton on. Here, let me get up and out of the way so you can come through.
Like your shoes.
Oh, thank you. All right. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. So Peter Benton from Worldwide CRO, we have spent a lot of time talking about how are we going to do clinical research better, differently. how did we need to mobilize things. We had a great conversation yesterday with Moderna and Piedmont Healthcare talking about, how they did things and how things moved. And everybody here has been looking to Peter for kind of guidance in what the future looks like. So we thought it would be great, Jen. I really wanted him to talk to our audience as well. And maybe just tell us a little bit about Worldwide first for those who may not know it, but then really kind of what you see as some future trends in how things are going.
Sure. Yeah, Worldwide Clinical Trials, we're a mid-sized CRO. We're actually ranked as number one in kind of quality and performance by ISR, but it's taken a lot of hard work to get there. We're about 2,600 employees around the globe. We're in 60 countries. I think we have 32 offices, very globally distributed, focused on oncology, mostly small tumors, also big in CNS, cardiovascular, and inflammation. So we stay really therapeutically focused. We have a lot of world-class leaders, PhDs, MDs, and kind of world-class leaders in each of our disease areas that we focus. So, whether it's Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or cancer, we've got some really bleeding-edge clinicians and clinical development leaders. So what we do is we execute the trial on behalf of the biotech. So, we do all of the logistics, collection, choosing the sites, finding the right patients, doing that across the globe for each of these indications. We spend a lot of time helping our customers probably modify and redesign some of their protocols. Sometimes, we've had customers with, as Dr. Murphy will tell you, some beautiful protocols that are absolutely elegant and fantastic, but first of all, it's not executable. And second of all, even if you do get to market and get approval for that label, nobody's going to buy it. So, you've really got to be thinking about the holistic commercialization aspect of what you're doing.
Earlier on.
Yeah.
So a question for you. We have been talking a lot about, and our audience kind of hears a lot about delivering healthcare in the community. And one thing that we turned to yesterday and talked about as well is clinical trial recruitment, clinical trial delivery, and not doing it out of a large center in a major city, but rather really trying to get out into the community. Will you just talk a little bit about your thoughts of where we're going and how we can head in that direction, or if that's realistic now?
Yeah, I did a panel with Laurie Halloran a few months ago about not going back, and I said I was optimistically skeptical. So, I'm optimistic that COVID has forced us to do things that we were not going to have to do before. And we really should be streamlining a lot of the ways we run clinical trials and get out to larger patients and do more things remote. Unfortunately, I'm also skeptical because we are a very risk-averse industry and we revert back to the way we've always been doing it. It's better than the days when I first started at J&J. I remember tractor trailers showing up every day full of pieces of paper that would then be double data entry, key punched to figure out if the data is correct. And we've come a long way since then, but we haven't come far enough to the way trials are run. So
Tractor trailers look like server rooms now, but
yeah.
So can you tell people a little bit then about how you got to where you are? We didn't lead with that, but it would be great to kind of hear your course and how you kind of ended up here. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we were talking about a couple things. I think the golden age of clinical research in one of the panels yesterday. I'd love to expound upon that in a minute. But, I ended up here pretty accidentally. I began my career, I grew up outside of Boston, went to Northeastern. I'm actually a mechanical engineer, specialty in material science. And I worked for the government as a weapons designer. And I then worked at the Watertown Arsenal when Watertown was not a biotech hub like it is today.
When Arsenal wasn't a mall and now a biotech area.
No, it was literally a military arsenal. So I worked there for many years while in school and did a lot of interesting projects for them. When I graduated, I went to work for GE, and back then GE was in the aerospace business, and I built nuclear guidance programs and tank transmissions and a whole bunch of other things. Then I migrated to the automotive industry. Did everything from electronics, seat belts, airbags, and then J&J decided that they said, what else costs $1 billion and takes 10 years to bring to market other than drug development? And the answer is either aerospace products, car launches,
Okay.
And so they were specifically for someone from outside the industry to come in and bring new ideas. And I really thought at that point back in 2000 that I could radically change the way we do drug development and make things different and better. And there's a lot of things that are a lot better, and a lot of things are still the same way they were, 20 years ago.
Yep. This sounds reminiscent of what Art said when he first started too, right? A lot of us come into completely change something, and we get a good bit of it done, and then we realize that some of it's going to take a little longer.
Yeah.
I think we have some comments coming in from the audience here.
We do have some comments coming in. I'm sorry, the choppy Wi-Fi. We don't know who this person is because of choppy Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
But we have a LinkedIn user saying, "I'd love to talk to you about distributed target therapy oncology trials and neurocognitive decline studies with nutritional interventions." Are those?
Yeah,
areas that
I think that's fantastic. I mean, again, back to that golden age of clinical research. 20 years ago, we treated symptoms. That's all we did, right? We provided mostly chemical entities to treat symptoms of diseases. We've come so far in not just small molecule, but large molecule biologics. We've gotten down to the cellular level, the molecular level, what we're doing with gene editing, gene therapy. And again, I think nutritional intervention, another area that I'm just fascinated with is the gut biome. I mean, you look at the, 2 billion, 3 billion different, gut biome targets. I know of a couple engineered bacteriophage companies that are going after UTIs, right? Instead of just giving a mass spectrum, a drug to just destroy your whole, your whole stomach. Now we're able to target individual bacteria. There's some mixed results from a company called Cortexime that just announced about their drug for Alzheimer's. So again, they believe that gingivitis, if we fail to floss, gingivitis is getting through the blood-brain barrier through our gums and causing inflammation in the brain. And they have some interesting results from that. So again, what if a lot of our disease states are really caused by a single bad bacteria in our gut biome, and we can radically go take those. But I think nutrition, I think the gut biome, the genetic engineering, as I think it was Art, whoever said, the golden age of clinical things are just exploding. We still probably only know, you're a doctor, I don't know, 10% of the human body. It's amazing.
We have a lot left to learn, One thing I love about that question, though, is that the same person is thinking about targeted oncologic therapies and separately thinking about nutrition, right? And that's where we've come. We all today don't just say this one thing, right? We say we recognize there is value in so many different ways of treating people and value in therefore having clinical trials that are able to deliver whichever type of therapy that is. But again, like you said, delivering therapy is far more upstream now, really thinking about being, less reactionary in the clinical trials we do.
And I think so many diseases are big system problems. As an engineer, I mean, there is, think about the Boeing Dreamliner and problems with their batteries or electrical system, right? It's not one thing, it's multiple things all contributing, many different factors, design factors, process factors, et cetera. And again, I think as we get into, making progress in a lot of these disease states like Alzheimer's, which is something I'm passionate about, I think we're going to find it's a combination of factors and a combination of issues that all come together, and just targeting one is not the right answer. The good news is so many companies are making great progress in a lot of different areas, and I'm excited to see it all come together.
So maybe then two last questions. So one is, you just kind of alluded to it. When we're doing clinical trials right now, we are generally doing maybe one intervention that is new on top of some baseline intervention, right? So, we have placebo versus, but then we have, here's what usual care is, and then we're doing this. But you mentioned that there's going to be multi-targeted interventions. How much more complicated is that going to get for a CRO to be able to handle? And what do you think we need to do to be ready to do those kind of trials? Because, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah. I think it's going to get more complicated for all of us. One of my mentors many years ago told me, as I had joined the industry, he said, you're in a great place, because guess what? We're going to have, the more medicine you have, the older you get, the more medicine you need, the more medicine you get, the older you get, right? It goes through. And so children being born today, they're saying are going to live to be 130 years old. I mean, think about the level of healthcare and all of the complexities with all the different treatments, right? I mean, they're going to have re-engineered eyes. They're going to have 3D printed skin tissue and bones. And, we are going to find a way to extend the warranty on the human body significantly. But there's going to be a lot of different treatments. And I still think there's lots to be learned about all the intersection of these different diseases. And, after 20 years of talking about personalized medicine, now we're able to really, truly start to understand how different each individual is. And not just race, ethnicity, et cetera, right? I mean, father, son, mother, daughter, genetic differences in the way the human body processes, whether it's drugs or treatments.
Yeah.
So it's going to get complex, and there's a lot to be aware of.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is putting one last bite of breakfast in his. I'm sorry, I'm just going to call you out on that. Putting one last bite of breakfast in his mouth before he comes over. But Peter, this is fantastic, and I hope it's okay if when we find who these LinkedIn users are,
Sure,
we put them
absolutely.
in touch with you.
Absolutely.
It was Jim Howard, CEO of Readout Health.
Oh,
Yeah,
fantastic!
okay.
We can put you in
Yeah.
touch
Yep.
with
And
you.
peter.benton@worldwide.com. So should be enough.
Great,
Thank you.
Peter. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, we'll bring you around, Rodrigo. Yeah, why don't you come and sit?
Morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Great. How are you?
All right, we just stay live the whole time. This is how we do things.
It's fantastic.
Very good. So next we have Rodrigo Martinez with us, and he's a local guy to us from CIC-Health. It has been fantastic to see what you guys have done during COVID, first of all, and thank you. Because not only as physicians, but as consumers and people in the Boston area, you have made the process of understanding how to live with COVID so much easier for all of us. So really appreciate the efforts.
Big team.
Yeah.
Big team effort.
Yep. So maybe will you start by just telling our audience, I think a lot of people out there probably are really familiar with CIC-Health, but just a little bit about you guys.
Yeah.
And then we can go from there.
Absolutely. So we come out of CIC, the Cambridge Innovation Center, which for those in the Boston area is sort of well-known co-working space, place for innovative small, medium-sized companies. And we've been around 20 years, 9 locations around the world, and 7,000 startups have come and emerged from
Phenomenal.
CIC.
I did not realize it was 7,000. Right?
Including Android. So Android starts at the CSE, HubSpot, some other amazing, wonderful companies. And then in the pandemic, clearly many of our clients decided to stop coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So Tim Rowe, our fearless leader, thought, the long story is, hey, if we are able to test some of our staff and some of the companies, some of our guests, our clients,
Mm-hmm.
then we will have more people coming into the office.
Mm-hmm.
So we just need to find a company that we can pay them to test us for COVID. And there was no one. So we had to do it ourselves. So Tim, and then with co-founder Dr. Atul Gawande, and then I joined, Rachel Wilson joined, and we started, we had this team. And anyway, so we established basically a company that would connect the lab, in this case, the Broad Institute, that had the capacity, with all these people that wanted to be tested, but there was no way to make that connection. So really the innovation here was, we're going to create the connective tissue between both in a good, seamless experience. And that was basically the beginning.
And do you have a sense of how many people you have served by any chance?
Yeah, so we've done, in our calculations, we've done close to 4 million individual tests.
4 million tests.
Now it's a combination of, because remember, some of the tests we do are pool tests.
Yep, sure.
And some are individual tests, and some are anyway. So we, typically we think that we're around 2.5 million tests.
Phenomenal. So now looking forward, and I've never actually asked you this before, so this is really a fresh question from me to you. You've built this system and this platform and this mechanism, and it's great for COVID, but boy, it's a platform now, right? For connecting people to testing and to unique testing and to new testing as it comes out. What are you guys thinking about that and moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, so there's two parts to that. One was we complemented the testing with the vaccinations. When the Governor Baker and the team sort of invited us to run vaccination sites, we set up in January this year Gillette Stadium, and then 2 weeks later Fenway Park, and then Reggie Lewis Athletic Center, and then the Heinz, etc. So a lot of the complementary to the testing was the logistics for the vaccination site. Now we basically ran that until June. We did also different pop-ups all over the state. Right now we're focused on testing schools. So right now we're doing most of the schools of Massachusetts. We have done we're working with close to 2,000 schools. And we'll that's the focus right now, is just staff, teaching staff, school staff, and students all over the state. And then the question is what? And we're obviously considering a series of different options and alternatives. But it also depends what happens in the next 6 months, right? Like we thought at the beginning of the summer, we ramped down the testing business. The vaccine business was great because we were supporting that side. The testing, the schools didn't want to test. People didn't need to test a lot. Like nobody knew what would happen with Delta in the middle of the summer. We started getting calls, and it's like, no, it's going to ramp up again in the fall. And we are doing now more than we ever did, right? Every week right now, we have broken the record of the number of tests we've done for the last 3 weeks.
Wow. And this is partly because schools want to be in person, partly because we're going back in person for things like this, where people need to do. We're trying to get back to regular life, and testing is so essential to that.
That's exactly right.
So good, excellent.
That's exactly right.
Just a quick question on a personal note. Vaccines for kids, will you guys be doing that as well? Will you be coordinating, or is that not going to be something? Do you know?
Well, we don't know yet. If we are asked or invited to, we will do what is needed.
Wonderful.
Of course. And having 2 girls, one of them already vaccinated, the other one not yet. Obviously, there's
That's
also
right.
personal.
Rodrigo and I live in the same world right now, one vaccinated, one unvaccinated daughter. So this is a daily conversation. Good. Can you tell us a little bit about you then? How did you get started? Your story for our listeners out there, to how you ended up at CIC
Well, so I came for grad school 22 years ago, and I had no plans. I had no idea. I was just lucky. I came from Mexico, and I had $125 when I came into Logan, and a scholarship.
Lovely.
So it was a gift, basically, and really the dream. And so I did school, I finished that, I went into consulting. I was at Boston Consulting Group for 6 years in healthcare practice here in Boston. And then I felt I needed to complement sort of the one part of the brain with a more creative approach to designing. So I went to IDEO, the global design firm. I did that 6 years, and then startups, startup world. Veritas Genetics with George Church and the team. Co-founded a food microbiome company.
Excellent.
Worked with several others, and then pandemic. And that's when Tim said, "Hey, I think we're gonna turn this testing into a business, because now we're having schools and others asking us to come. Prisons in Vermont are asking us, can we support that?" So it was from that I said, "Okay, I'm happy to help you out for 3 months."
And here you are.
And here I am.
That's right. That's right. Wonderful. Advice for, actually, let's do 2 different things. One is advice for kind of young people who are trying to navigate their way through kind of startup, biotech kind of world. And then second, and you and I touched upon this a little bit yesterday in the diversity section that we had. And we talked a little bit about, quick reminder, everybody who's on the show is giving their own opinions and not representing their companies, because I'm going to ask some challenging questions, so important to know that. So we talked a little bit in the diversity segment about how diversity has kind of changed, what it felt like sometimes when you're diverse from someone or not, right? Is it even obvious? And then how more recently there has been a different take, not only on the importance of diversity, including it in our boards and our companies, but almost a different kind of feeling and culture about the idea of being from Mexico or being from India. And I would just love your thoughts on that, because you started to see some great stuff yesterday. So maybe first some advice for our entrepreneurs who are out there, and then we can end up with thoughtfulness.
I mean, I think one of the lessons that I see from what happened to us in the last year is that, we didn't innovate anything on science. We didn't innovate anything on clinical or on manufacturing or any of that. But our ability to connect the people to two most important things in health that we, all of us, need at this critical time, which was a test and a vaccine. That connective tissue, that bridge between the incredible products like a test or a lab or a vaccine and people's arms, people's noses, was actually, it turns out to be an important innovation. Which 2 years ago we never thought we'd need. We're like, we're Massachusetts. We have hospitals. We have universities. We have incredible doctors. Like, we have biotech. We have amazing, which we do, but we hadn't done the last mile. And so I think sometimes finding actually that last mile of within industries, within there are opportunities there. Anyway, so which typically we don't look for. So that would be, I guess, one.
I love that. Look for that missing link.
Exactly. Look, I think on the personal side, the years of the last administration were very hard for many of us. I think for me personally, it was the first time that I felt attacked in this minute country, and that was difficult, as many others have felt that. I'm not saying my case is unique, but it did start to shift the way I thought about being understanding of other minority groups, being more curious about, I don't know what is the life of an African American in this country, right? Like, or someone from India, or so having felt that and forcing me to be more thoughtful also allowed me to be a little bit more curious about other types of diverse environments, which I think is good, right? Like, so I see that. Now, one aspect of diversity that was very important is, we had a great partnership. We have a great partnership with the state, with the Commonwealth. And part of the goals when we were delivering the vaccines was equity. And to find the most affected neighborhoods, to find the people where they are. So we developed a whole program around the vaccination side, the Reggie Lewis, which is in Roxbury. For those that are not necessarily know the area, this is one of the poorest regions of the city and its neighborhoods. And we created a whole program to go and find people where they were. We translated materials into 8 different languages. We had, everything from door hangers. We put tens of thousands of door hangers in every house of these neighborhoods, in Roslindale, Roxbury, you name it, Jamaica Plain, etc. We had a whole group that we worked with from the community to help us identify places like beauty salons, where a conversation about a vaccine would have an incredible effect on equity. Right. So there's an aspect of that I thought, for me, that's one of the most rewarding things, and also an experience, because I'd never had the opportunity to be on the ground doing these things with our team. And again, we have an incredible team of people. This is obviously not me. That was very interesting and important. And the question is, how do we maintain that, and how we do even more, right? Because sometimes building the trust of working closely with Black Boston COVID Coalition, or with a Hispanic Latino group, or whatever it is, immigrant group of a group that supports immigrants, etc. It's really important. So that personally was very, very rewarding.
This
and I would say,
fantastic.
and I can't not say that one of the most rewarding moments, of course, is when my 14-year-old daughter got vaccinated. So.
Yep. That there was the day that we were vaccinated. There was the day my parents were vaccinated. What a sigh of relief! But that day that your kid is first vaccinated is unbelievable. This is amazing, Rodrigo. The work that you have done at CIC-Health, the way you have helped so many people, the thoughtfulness and planning and purposeful efforts to really be equitable in the work that you were doing. And then thank you for sharing your own personal thoughts as well. I think maybe leaving this concept with the idea of curiosity is what brought us all here to the Convergence Forum. I think it's what brings many of you to our show, and we're so grateful to have you out there, since we can't all be in person all the time. But I think curiosity leads us there, and it most certainly will lead us to to more equity and
Yeah.
more inclusion. So
Well, thank you for having us.
thank you. Jen, are we
That's
wrapping
fine.
up?
We should wrap up. Yes.
Okay. Should we have Shane? Are you comfortable saying a goodbye to everybody? Do you want to come because you've been the mastermind behind this? Rodrigo, thank you again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Singh.
Shane Gilbert, mastermind behind Convergence Forum, making this all happen, starting with a nor'easter, with downed trees outside and no power, and yet being here through all of that in the cold, and making it a warm and inviting and welcoming place for all of us with such a successful conference.
Well, thank you so much. But it's really both of you and everybody who is here that makes the conference successful. You know, I come away from this saying, more important than ever before, we're all human and we all want to interact, and that's the nature of who we are and what we do. You use the term curiosity, which is spot on. But we also talk about the community and that you come here and it's not what can you do for me, but how can I help you? And that is, you hear the conversations happening constantly. How can I help you? How can I help forward what you're trying to do? And that makes it really special. And I think that's why people they also made the choice to be here, to come here, even though we weren't sure how much power we were going to have, or and we had to put all kinds of protocols into place, obviously, because of the pandemic. So I'm grateful to everybody this year, including both of you.
This has been great. So I will say, Shane walked into a couple of the breakout rooms yesterday, and doing a great job of just kind of making sure everybody was okay. But one thing that I've heard you say a few times, so I'm going to tell the audience about it, was, we really want all of you to now think about action when you go back to your communities. What can you do to further this conversation? What items can you put in place? I mean, you had said it in the diversity and equity section, but I think it's relevant to so many of the conversations that we have, is when you come back out and these kind of meetings are starting again. And I know many of us are so excited to, go. Then Peter Benton was talking about CES, and I can't wait for January. But it's not just to go there and to be social. It's also now a new global world where we say, what can we take from what we've learned here? And how can we really carry and bring that back? So it's not isolated to these beautiful moments and meetings, but we don't want it to just be that. And you're one of those people, Shane, that always says, if this can grow out from here, then that's when we're successful.
Right. We want to spark the discussion. We want to create action, and it might not be you directly that can do something, but it might be your neighbor or your colleague or somebody in your family. And so those discussions, those sparks that we create here, hopefully go and actually become much more impactful over time. So thank you.
I'm certain they will. Thank you so much for having us with you here. It has been a great conference today. Will be great as well. Jennifer, can you come back on camera to say bye to our audience, or do you think we'll crash the whole system? We will crash the whole system. I will say goodbye on our behalf. Thank you to Shane and Scott for having us. Jennifer and I are really grateful for our audience, always following us wherever we go. And we look forward to seeing you guys again next week. Be safe. Have a great weekend.